All right, let's get fired up. Let's get. Oh, y'all ain't ready. Yeah.
I think so. I think Josh is. He hasn't told me what he is. Okay, 30 seconds to start broadcast.
She doesn't like to. She just wants to be there. Yep. She's amazing.
Okay, broadcast starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 30 seconds. Tell me your name.
Penelope.
Penelope. Okay. All right, Penelope. 20 seconds. 15 away. 10 seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, everyone. I would formally like to welcome you to the 2021 SGA Executive Forum. My name is Penelope Rodriguez, and I serve as the Student Election Commissioner for the Student Government Association. Thank you all for being here today, and a special thank you to the Hub at TTU, the Daily Torador, and the College of Media Communications for helping us host this event. This forum is being live streamed on YouTube and the SGA Facebook page, and will be available after the event as well. I want to remind everyone here this evening to be respectful as possible. The format of the evening will be as follows. The forum will be divided into 4 rounds based on office of the following order: Graduate Vice President, Internal Vice President, External Vice President, the Student Body President. A round will consist of opening remarks, questions from the panel, audience questions, and closing statements. Each candidate will have an opportunity to make an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes. Each candidate will then respond to a total of 6 questions, 3 from the panel and 3 from the audience. For each question, the candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Student Body President Hunter Heck will oversee the timing and raise time cards, indicating 1 minute left, 30 seconds left, and when time is up. The panel questions will be asked in the following order: Chase Siepel, Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Torador; Barrett Burge, the reporter at the Hub at TTU; current executive officer for the corresponding position, Hunter Heck, will ask questions to the Student Body President candidate and External Vice President candidate. Clay Davis will ask questions to the Internal Vice President candidate. Charles Remy will also ask questions to the Graduate Vice President. The audience questions have been gathered via Google Form open to the students at Texas Tech University. Each candidate for office has to respond to 6 questions. The round will conclude with closing statements. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for the closing statements. With that being said, let's get started. I now present the Graduate Vice President candidate may approach the podium. You have 2 minutes to provide your opening remarks. You may begin as soon as you're ready.
Awesome. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I look forward to answering your questions. My name is Jarrett Lujan. I am running for Graduate Vice President for SGA. A little bit about me. I am from Marfa, Texas. I'm here majoring in a PhD in higher education research. And really, to begin to talk about my love for student advocacy, starts at Angelo State University, our sister school in our system. I started there as an SGA senator and kind of worked my way up to become a student body president at Angelo State. And that's truly where I fell in love with higher education as a whole and kind of got bit by what we call the higher ed bug. And I've been working in higher ed ever since. That eventually led me to become the student regent, the first Hispanic student regent at the Texas Tech University system. And because of that, I learned all the great things about Texas Tech University, which led me to actually come here to pursue my PhD after receiving my master's. And I fell in love with it. I've loved it ever since. I've been a Texas Tech fan almost all my life, and actually getting to come here and experience campus has been a rewarding experience. And that actually led me to getting involved. I just could not stay involved while I was here. So I got involved with Graduate Assembly and then the Supreme Court of Texas Tech, SGA. In that, I learned a lot about this campus and learning to serve the graduate students and how to accurately make sure that their needs are being met. So I look forward to answering your questions, and I'm excited to hear from you guys.
We'll now proceed from questions from the panel. The first question of the night will go to Chase Siebold. You may proceed with your question. And Jarrett, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you.
So you're one of the few graduate students that are able to represent all the graduate students around campus. What legislation are you wanting to work on to help improve the tech experience graduate students receive on the Texas Tech campus?
Yeah, great question. I think that one of the main things that graduate students worry about is obviously insurance. It gets talked about every year, but if we don't keep bringing it up, it might lose its traction. And I think that, sponsoring legislation that just asks administration to continue to talk about the issue and address it is important. Another thing that I think that needs to be addressed is representation and kind of gathering the graduate student voice together. In that we have a lot of factions, a lot of different student organizations on campus that are graduate student specific. And I think that we need to gather together under one voice and continue to just advocate, to our representatives and our campus officials.
All right, thank you. Barrett, you may now proceed with your question.
So as I'm sure happens from time to time when you're in office, disagreements arise between you and your coworkers. So how would you handle an internal conflict between you and your co-executive officers?
Yeah, so one of the greatest things that I think about leadership is, first is accountability, and also admitting when you're wrong. And one of the things that I appreciate about my fellow executive officers is that we've had many discussions. We've had discussions that we've disagreed with, and that we've talked through, and we've had compromise. And that already tells me that this is gonna be an amazing executive group. So how do I personally handle conflict? First is just by taking it in, kind of reflecting upon myself. What are my different biases that I have? How am I looking at the situation, and how is the other person approaching the situation? And then after that, once I've kind of reflected upon it and kind of decided on what I wanna do and how I wanna approach it, then I'll approach the person and discuss it with them, and making sure that I'm holding them accountable, but also voicing my opinion about the subject. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Charles, you may now proceed with your question.
All right. TTU's enrolled general graduation population consists of 6,590 students, where approximately 50% of the population identify as people from marginalized groups. And within colleges, these groups' demographics drastically change. As GVP, many constituents come seeking solutions to problems that may be outside of one's power or authority. So my question is, in your tenure as a student at TTU, will you share with us just how you have organized and or advocated for graduates' involvement with SGA? Also, how do you intend to promote shared governance within SGA amongst graduates and undergraduates?
Yeah, so I think that to answer your first question is organizing, right?
Organizing and or advocating.
Okay, so I think that one, to acknowledge that the majority of our graduate students are made up of minoritized, like you said, minoritized communities. Another big piece of that is that a big group is international students, and I think we have to start there to talk about what the international student needs are. How do we go about doing that? I think it starts with one-on-one conversations with each marginalized population, but also just different types of student. How is a white student experiencing campus? How is a black student experiencing campus at the graduate level? And that includes the law school as well, and including them in all those conversations. So I think it starts with just having those one-on-one conversations, those intimate conversations about what their needs are. And then how do we get it into SGA? Was that your second question?
Yeah, it's about promoting shared governance within SGA amongst graduates and undergraduates.
So I think that shared governance, especially amongst graduate students, is a very hot topic, and I think it needs to be revisited. because we need more of a graduate student voice. I think there's a misconception about graduate students that we don't want to get involved, and that's, I think, is completely false. I think that we need to just mobilize ourselves a little bit better and include each other in the conversations. And the way that we do that is just by having our executive kind of own that and bringing graduate students in and involving them in those conversations as well.
We'll now proceed with questions from the audience. So the first question is, many of the graduate students at Texas Tech also serve as teacher assistants. Do you believe they are fairly compensated for the level of skill and knowledge they are required to use?
I will always advocate for students to receive higher compensation while they are at TTU or while they're in any school. There's obviously budgetary issues. One of the things that's going through Congress right now, obviously, is the argument and the debate over minimum wage raising. If that were to happen, I think that would change the conversation on college campuses of how they compensate TAs, RAs, GAs, whatever role that you serve. And I think that's a conversation that needs to happen. I mean, one of the things that I love about student advocacy is that, it's just a conversation. Whether that conversation goes a little bit further to an actual action is the rewarding part. But having the conversation with administrators and those that oversee different budgeting would be helpful. And I think that it is also a department by department issue, and we need to take it step by step as those come. So as those requests come, I think that it needs to happen on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. And the second question, how do you promote graduate school to those who think they can't afford it or those who think they don't need it for their future?
Yeah, and that's something that we're actually wanting to work on, and it's an initiative called Lift While You Climb. One of the things that I struggled with being a Latino is not seeing myself in graduate school and not being able to see beyond just a bachelor's degree. And so one of the initiatives that I want to work on is actually getting graduate students who are from minoritized or traditionally underrepresented organizations or groups and get them to go back into undergrad organizations and inspire them and pull them along and teach them and give them advice on how to actually go to graduate school and enroll in graduate school and what are the different hurdles that they've gone through. I think that by starting that and giving those, letting undergraduate students see themselves actually in the literature and in graduate school is super, super important, and representation matters. The more that the graduate school grows its populations of minoritized communities, is going to increase the ability and the knowledge and foresight of those students to be able to go to graduate school. So I think that it starts there. It's really important, especially to me being a person of the BIPOC community, to inspire those marginalized groups to attend graduate school.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your responses tonight. You may return to your seat.
Awesome. Thank you.
The internal vice president candidate may approach the podium. You have 2 minutes to provide your opening statement, and you may begin as soon as you're ready.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, my name is Taylor Antonick. I am a junior agricultural and applied economics major. I am from a small, tight-knit community in East Texas, and I come from a small, tight-knit college here on campus. Whenever I was trying to decide where I was going to go to college, a big piece of my decision came when I came to visit Texas Tech. I walked into the College of Ag Sciences and Natural Resources office, unannounced, unscheduled, and the dean of students, the dean of our college, and 2 faculty and staff members sat down with me for over an hour and a half to talk about my course options and what life could look like for me as a student. That changed everything for me. And what I thought that day was a personal experience that I could consider a rarity actually proved not to be. As I came to Texas Tech, I got involved in things like student government and in the College of Ag, and all of a sudden it became apparent that we have one of the most willing and able administrations to communicate with our students and advocate for them. And I feel incredibly lucky to go to Texas Tech for that reason. But I think with that blessing that we have also comes the responsibility to make sure that our students and our student senators recognize the responsibility they have to advocate for our students to an administration who wants to hear from them. And that's why I'm here today. I love the work our student government does. I love the work our Senate does. And I love the chance that we have the possibility to facilitate change through the Senate chamber. And so my goal is to support our student senators to make sure that they have all of the resources and connections they need in order to be as successful as possible, and ensure not only that their success happens, but that every student on campus has a similar experience or an experience that is as great for them as mine has been. Thank you.
We'll now proceed to questions from the panel. First question comes from Chase. You may begin your question, and you have 2 minutes to respond.
So if elected as internal vice president, you have to fill 16 vacant seats, which is just about a quarter of the Senate. How will you go about doing so in a fair and equal way? And what makes you qualified to appoint all the senators as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fair question. Thank you. I know that even as we were discussing Senate elections this year, we were trying to find students who could fill these positions and run with us on our block Writer Land Renewed. And it was a common occurrence that we were not being able to find a lot of these students. You'll notice whenever we campaign next week, we don't have a full block, a full slate. And so this is something that's important to us because whenever we look at the numbers, our student senators make up 2/10,000ths of our university. And so that means that we have a small group of people who are supposed to advocate for change on behalf of all of our students here. And so as we go into that, I believe, maybe it's my work working for the dean of a college, but I believe that the deans of our college, for one, know the students who want to lead and affect change in their colleges specifically. And so that would be my first point of contact. Contacting deans who I may not necessarily know, but who may at least have ideas for students who would be interested in serving in the Student Senate and contacting them. And I feel like that would be a fair and unbiased way to go about that because I only know so many people. I can't guarantee you that I know a student in every college on campus. And so that would definitely be my first point. I would also say that in terms of me being qualified, I bring 3 years of experience in student government. However, that being said, I also rely on the experience of our executive team. I know that I don't know everything, and I know that the Student Government Association is filled with so many students, faculty members, and staff who are qualified. And so I believe that together we can come up with a solution to fill all of those vacant seats and make sure that student voices are heard.
Thank you. Barrett, you may now proceed your question.
So what do you think makes you a good leader, and what makes you stand out from other leaders?
Oh no. Well, I will say first of all, if you were to categorize the normal leader, you would often have people who say that maybe a leader who's outspoken or who's loud, or and I'll be the first to say that's not me. I am definitely not that. But I will say I was raised in a house full of boys, and so I learned some very interesting lessons from that experience. The first is listening has a lot of power, because then you can win arguments if you have to. But luckily, my family, we are loud, and so I would say that my leadership style is to sit back and watch and listen and learn from the people around me. And that's been one of the most effective things for me as I've been here in the Student Senate. There are so many incredible people, not only in Student Senate, but across this university. And so for me, I become a better person when I get to learn. Just from the last semester of being with these 3 people, I am a better person because of it, and I learn something every time I'm with them. I think because of that, it lends me the ability to not necessarily always have to have things my way, because I get that my way is not always best. In fact, most often it probably isn't. And so I believe that that's the first step in what makes me a leader. I've served in a lot of different roles, whether it was for my college or the honors college or other roles across campus. And so luckily I've had practice, but I also believe in mentors who teach us, who call us out when we're wrong, and who help us along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay, you now may proceed with the question.
The internal vice president plays a significant role in student government. It is important to keep senators motivated, in turn providing an equitable college experience to the student body. Can you provide us with a plan to keep 77 student senators motivated?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been an interesting thing to see this year within the Student Government Association, within the Senate chamber. It's been interesting to see that some students come virtually to Senate and some students come in person. And we haven't heard a lot of debate on the floor of the Senate chamber this year, which has been interesting. I think of last week when we had our emergency Senate session, and oh my gosh, I'm so glad it happened. I'm so happy that we got to have that session, because we heard some of the most riveting debate that I've heard in a really long time. It was the type of debate that I heard when I was in the first year Leadership Association that had me hooked and made me want to stay. And so I hope that as we train through things like parliamentary procedure and go through all of our different Senate trainings, that our students will, for one, recognize the work that they do is important. I also believe a piece of this has to do with follow through. I think it's really easy to get excited about affecting change on campus when students know that they have a way to actually enact that change, when they know that they have the power to follow through on those pieces. That's not just a recommendation that they write, but as they communicate with faculty members, with administration, they have the power to actually make that change. And so I believe as we equip our senators with not only the training, but also the resources and connections throughout their year of service, they will then be able to affect change and stay motivated throughout the year.
We'll now proceed with questions from the audience. How do you plan on addressing unity on campus during such a polarizing time?
That's a really good question, and it's one that I think everyone struggles with and everyone has questions about. I think that for me, I came from a small town, and so I had a lot of preconceived notions before I came to college. And the biggest change that happened for me personally that I was able to learn from was sitting back and listening to the people around me. Our team, we were actually having a conversation today about people who we may argue with, and we were talking about it's really hard to hate people up close. When you understand where people are coming from, when you understand their motivations, their intentions, their hopes for the future, it's really difficult to then disagree, or I shouldn't say disagree, but to then attack that person's character. And I think that's the biggest change that I hope to see in the future, is that we can definitely disagree on opinions. That's cool, that's fine, I like disagreement. But at the same point, I hope that we can learn to respect each other despite those opinions, even if we continue to disagree, and to listen to each other. So when it comes to being on campus and doing that, I hope that we can create programs that give every student an opportunity to meet students from outside of their normal group. I think of SGA as a turning point for me in that respect. But hopefully, I think back to the Budget and Finance Committee this semester and how we had the chance to hear from so many different organizations on campus that are doing incredible things. I hope to visit a lot of different organizations in the coming year. But that's how we learn to not only recognize others' differences and how we can learn from them, but how we can grow together and be a better community here at Texas Tech.
Well, thank you so much for your responses tonight. It's been very insightful. You may return to your seat.
Appreciate it.
And the external vice president candidate may approach the podium. You have 2 minutes to provide your opening remarks, and you may begin as soon as you're ready.
Great. Well, my name is Ebering, and I'm an international student from Nigeria. I'm currently running for the external vice president of Texas Tech University. I have been a part of student government since my freshman year of college, starting with first year leadership and all the way to having a Senate position within the College of Business. For a lot of people, this was one of their first choices for college, but for me, it wasn't. My plan when I started school was to do 2 years at Tech and transfer out. It was always my plan, and my parents were with it, and we're gonna run with it. But when I came to Texas Tech, I knew I could never leave. And I knew that I could never leave because of the community I found within Lubbock and within the student body. And that community is rare to find. I've traveled a lot during my time, and the difference between the people I've met around and the people within Texas Tech and the Lubbock community as a whole is I felt like I was trying to be part of a family where I was or wherever I went. But for my first day at Texas Tech, I knew I was part of a family, and a family that stood by me and grew with me and encouraged me to be my best self. And that family is what I hope to give back and grow with as external vice president in the next upcoming year. I also interned in my freshman year under the executive vice president, Jarrett Hamood, at that time, and I saw her passion and her love and everything she was able to do as a representative for the student body. And I hope to be given that opportunity to do the same. Thank you.
We'll now proceed from questions from the panel. First question will be from Chase Siebold. You may now proceed with your question.
So being the liaison between the city of Lubbock and the Texas Tech community, how will you improve SGA's relations with the city government, local businesses, and then how will you encourage students from LISD to consider attending Texas Tech after graduating high school?
Okay, I heard like 3 parts to that question. So let's get to it. So the first thing is, the graduate vice president candidate already kind of touched on it, but we plan to start an initiative called Lift While You Climb. And we want to not just go from graduates to undergraduates, but also take students from different walks of life, go to these schools, such as LSID, and talk to these people and see why college is for you and why Texas Tech will make it happen. Because a lot of people see college as, I'm gonna rack up debt, and I'm gonna do this and do that, but I'm not accomplishing something. But there's a lot of people who start their college experience and are able to explore and see so much more. And that's what we hope to do through our initiative. And of course, with the local government, was that your question? Yes, okay. So with the local government, it's all communication and it's all speaking and continuous networking. We don't expect things to change unless we are part of the conversation, and that is one thing I hope as external vice president and as a representative of the student body to continue those conversations and be a liaison for the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Barrett, you may now proceed with your questions.
So as part of your job, you work with leaders of the community and within the Texas Tech faculty. So are you comfortable working with faculty members and with local leaders to get legislation accomplished? And can you give an example of a time you've done this in the past?
Yes, yes, I am very comfortable working on legislation pieces and getting things done. Just last week, there were 2 different things I was able to work on, one of which I worked on with the current graduate vice president was getting chessboards out to students from different elementary schools. And so one of the schools we were able to distribute chessboards to last week, Friday actually, was Addison. And it was a great experience just networking and talking with these people from these schools and seeing how things work. Because I may have been in Lubbock for 3 years, but I have never gone to certain places. And so it was an experience for me that I hope to continue while if elected and if put in the position as external vice president. And I didn't get your second part of the question.
Oh, that was perfect.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Hunter, you may now proceed with your question.
Hi, Avere. My question for you tonight is the following. One of the primary roles of the external vice president is to serve as the primary liaison between the Texas Tech student body and local, state, and national governments. You will oversee lobbying efforts this year through collaborative efforts across the state of Texas and the Big 12 Conference. What are your specific legislative priorities, and how do you plan on effectively taking these concerns to our governing bodies?
So aside from the Lift While You Climb initiative, there's 2 other initiatives that I'm really passionate and excited to work on next year, one of which is the transparency of fees. So a lot of time we go to our radar link and we check on there to see our fees, and we see this bill for $2,000 that we don't know what we're paying for. And sometimes it's hard. We're like, okay, we're dropping $5,000 this semester, but we don't know exactly what we're spending our funds on, or exactly what our funding or what our hard-earned money is going towards. And so we're working on it hopefully this upcoming year to just make it easier. Let students be able to see what exactly their funding is being used for and how exactly it can and how exactly they can utilize it to get the best experience that they would have. Another thing which we're working on is a podcast. SGA has a good reputation, but also doesn't have the best reputation sometimes when it comes to the transparency. And it's not because we're not doing everything we can, but there's always more that can be done because it is a continuous process. And so we'll hope to start podcasts which students can join or just listen to on a day-to-day basis, because not everybody wants to read the legislation piece. But as college students, as people within our age brackets, a lot of people are always on their phones. So why not listen to the podcast on your way to or from school and just have an opinion?
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with questions from the audience. So our first question is, what methods do you plan on employing to improve the public image of TTU and SGA?
So yes, I kind of already touched on it a bit, but of course I can go over it. The SGA podcast, which I believe will improve communication and will improve the relationship between SGA and the student body as well as the community. And of course, with Texas Tech, we do have a good reputation as it stands, but we can always continue to improve because it is continuous. We're not gonna say, oh, we're up to here when we can get up to the sky, And so how best can we improve that relationship, and how best can we make students know that Texas Tech is a school for them and a school with them? And there's just various ways we can do that, and one of which is by communicating and having that one-on-one conversation with students, and having conversations with prospective students through let them know that they are welcome. And some people don't feel like they are, because our school is predominantly white. Some people feel like they go into a class and they're the only ones who look like them. But by having one-on-one conversations and encourage them to be the trendsetter for other people, to know that they are always welcome and there are opportunities at Texas Tech.
Thank you. And our second question is, because of COVID, the university got rid of several alternative means of transportation, like limes and birds. What is your plans to get these back, and how to innovate transportation to be more accessible and good for the environment?
So the first part of your question is the plan to get it back. So the current administration, the external vice president, Faisal Hamood, he has been working with the line to try and see ways that which you can get it back. I know that the pandemic has affected not just us and not just the US, but the world in its entirety. But we understand how the virus works, and we've taken precautions, and we are going to continue taking precautions in the upcoming year to ensure that students are able to get where they want to get and feel safe and be where they want to be without feeling that it's some sort of cost to them. And so we're going to begin the conversations over summer of how can we get the ride programs back, where students can ask for a ride to or from campus for free to make sure that they get to where they want to be and feel safe doing so.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your responses tonight. It's been very insightful. So you may return to your seat.
Thank you.
The student body president candidate may now approach the podium.
Hello, my name is Faisal Hamood. Something that's funny is that I was born 22 years ago in a hospital that was 1.5 miles away from where I currently stand. I went to a high school that's 0.5 miles away. You can literally see the tower from university. I don't tell a lot of people this, but I applied to one school and one school only, and that was Texas Tech University. Both my parents teach here. They graduated from here with graduate degrees. And Texas Tech University has done more for me, for my community, for my family and the people who I love than I could have ever anticipated. And whether I like it or not, I bleed red and black. Texas Tech University is smarter, it's bigger, and it's more recognized globally, nationally, municipally than ever before. But with that being said, with progress and with all that's happening, there's still a lot of work to be done, and there's still a lot of responsibility to do that. And where I find my responsibility in this role is to advocate for students and to be the mediation between faculty, staff, administration, and the students themselves. And that's where I found my passion through Student Government Association, whether it be working in the First Year Leadership Association, student senator, or as external vice president. I love Student Government Association because we are established under the fundamentals of democracy, and that instead of allowing the things that make us different and unique to polarize us and to make us different, we find ways to embrace those things. And because I truly believe that when we do embrace our differences, life is not only better, but it's easier. And as a result of my experiences here in Lubbock and in the Texas Tech community, Texas Tech has always chosen me and has always given me and my family and just everyone around me in this community amazing opportunities. And I am honored, and it is a privilege to run for student body president and to have the opportunity to give it back.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with our first panel question. Chase, you may proceed with your question.
So over the last year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a kind of disconnect between SGA and the student body. So as student body president, how do you plan to kind of rebuild that and kind of touch base on the transparency as well?
Yeah, well, Abere touched on this a lot, and also not just through transparency through a podcast, but also through updating our websites. Something that currently one of the interns of our First Year Leadership Association is working on is updating our website. You know, we should have places and columns in this website that talk about what happens on a weekly basis in Senate, something that's condensed so people can understand, you know, what is the legislative body? What do they actually do? What does our judicial branch do? What does our executive branch do? Why are initiatives just talked about in the beginning? Why aren't we constantly talking about them and updating them? how come we don't have an area on our website that allows the public to give suggestions and concerns as to how they feel about the way student government is operating? There are a lot of ways that we can be a lot more transparent with students, not only by updating them with our work, but also through allowing them to give us their concerns. And that's kind of, it transitions to a lot of our wellness ideas as well. This pandemic has unfortunately skyrocketed mental instability and a lot of things that go with that because of just sheer isolation. And the problem with isolation is that you're not going to be the one generally to take yourself out of it. It's the community that needs to unify and pull each other out of it. And so that's why we are advocating strongly for essential needs pertaining to debt, pertaining to food insecurity, just taking care of these essential basic elements of college life that students have either missed out on over the last year, whether it be socially or economically, and even if they haven't been missing out on it, there are so many different things that we've been stripped away this year, and these inequities that we have faced this year have not only happened this year, but they have illuminated, and it would be a privilege to be in a position where we can highlight these inequities.
Thank you. Sorry, your 2 minutes has expired. Barrett, you may now proceed with your question.
So what plans do you have to continue legislation you are currently working on?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So I think right now one of the most important things that I'm working on is something called the Safe Bar Initiative. This was actually our student body president, Hunter Heck's, one of the initiatives she ran on. And fortunately, to this day, we're continuing progress in this area. Unfortunately, nightlife on college campuses, it leads to a lot of personal trauma to a lot of people, whoever you are, wherever you come from. And this trauma sometimes is paralyzing, and it often leads to people not wanting to talk about their experiences. So firstly, through advocating for transparency and strengthening especially our relationship with the RISE office. And so with the Safe Bar Initiative, rather than having this conversation to occur, rather than having to react to situations where there are cases of sexual assault, we want to write legislation, which we have. We actually passed a piece a couple weeks ago that goes into looking into the social science of being a bouncer at a bar, and seeing like why are cases of sexual assault so ambiguous? Why is consent so hard to actually why is it so hard for it to be binary? Why is it not just a yes or a no? So legislation has been passed on that. Currently, we've contacted local bars, and they're on board, and we're developing a training with the RISE office. And so why I'm excited about this is because this is going to be hopefully something that not only is started at Texas Tech, but stays. It should stay. And hopefully, through seeing the progress of this year, next year we can implement further policies such as, people should have the option to choose who's going to give them a ride at home, especially if it's on Uber. Because a lot of the times we see in these cases, students tend to get a ride with people they don't know because their phone's dead or whatever. So, expanding into those areas.
2 minutes has expired. Thank you so much for your response. Hunter, you may now proceed with your question.
Hi, Faisal. Last summer, the United States participated in one of the largest anti-racism movements following the murder of George Floyd. As a result, we witnessed many students find a new voice of activism and saw the voices of students doing the work much longer, amplified on a larger scale on our campus. Student Government Association is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion in all of its forms. Can you please explain what these principles mean to you and specific efforts you have taken and will continue to take to continue the momentum that has been generated in the past year?
Thank you for that question, Hunter. This is one of the things I'm most passionate about. So if there's a problem and there's a solution to this problem that's unknown, and you had 10 people, I strongly think that I believe that having 10 people and each person has their unique skill set as opposed to 10 people with the same skill set is a lot more productive and beneficial to the people and also to the solution itself. And I think the solution would be found a lot quicker when those differences are, instead of ignored, are brought into the table, and these perspectives are just magnified onto each other. But at the same time, through being aware of what diversity, equity, inclusion actually means, we did, and I want to continue not just using diversity, equity, inclusion as a blanket statement to show that we're socially conscious, and not just using people's differences to claim that, look, like, we have diversity. It's by actually not only having them firstly, but by actually listening to them and actually understanding their different unique perspectives. I think one of the biggest problems that our generation faces is political and social polarization. And I think it's expedited on social media and all the different forms that we have compared to older generations. And I just would love to say to the university, for one of the initiatives that we want to do is actually something called breaking bread conversations. And it's having conversations one-on-one and conflict resolution. Because if we look at our neighbors, while we strip away all the things that socially and that categorizes socially, whether it be ethnically, racially, socioeconomically, strip all those things away and look at our neighbors as our neighbors and our family. I think that's where it starts. It's personalizing the conversations and not just having it be something that we're criticizing other people when we don't even know them. So I think that's the first start, having one-on-one conversations with people.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with questions from our audience. My first question is, what does leadership mean to you, and what is your purpose for being the leader of student government?
So what I think leadership is for me, it's equity. It's not, there should, even on paper there might be hierarchy, but it's treating people, whether it be whether it be your intern, whether it be the director of student government, whoever it is, administration, staff, however old they are, however young they are, however much experience they have, treating them as equal. Because when that happens, it's much easier to collaborate. Because I'm not just, in leading people aren't just following me. I mean, I'm just one person. Who am I? If you know me closely, you probably shouldn't follow me every day, everywhere I go. It's me following you and me learning from you as we go on. And I think where that comes from is having genuine, authentic relationships with people in student government and outside of student government. And I think that all stems from being genuine when you're wrong. Specifically, you can ask the current administration. It happens a lot, and as time goes by, as we talk about what happened that was right and what was wrong, I always find it's most productive not to blame others for your downfalls or for your inefficiencies, but to dig deep and to understand what you did wrong. Because when you do that, then other people will realize what they did wrong as well, and a solution and mediation is much more beneficial. And it's just much more genuine. And so as a leader, what I've found so far in my life is that you really just, you might think that you're leading, but the reality is you're just collaborating with people, because at the end of the day, we're just students. And student government is for the students. So that's what makes our campus and our Student Government Association so unique, especially when you compare them to other campuses as well. Students are our focal point. Our students are this university's engine. Without us, without your voices, without your opinions, we're nothing as students. And our power lies within our unity and strength in numbers. So.
Thank you. Our second question is, how do you plan to delegate your initiatives while still seeing them through?
Thank you for that question, because distillation is one of my biggest problems, because I'll have a thought, and rather than sharing it effectively, I'll just think about it and try to continually improve it in my head. And so this is actually one of the things that I've been told and I know that I need to work on. But in doing so, from the very get-go, if we're elected into office, assigning roles and assigning specific jobs, and knowing the difference between goals, objectives, and what we want to do on the daily routine and what we're looking to accomplish on a broader spectrum. And so in doing that, in giving people their independence to operate in whatever their jobs are entailed in, that's the first step. Because if you're just working in a position that has a title, and you just put this title on your resume and you say, I did this, this, and that, that's great, but do you know what the title actually entails and why it gives it a title in the first place? So really defining the role, defining the jobs from the very get-go is super important. And constant collaboration and constant communication and correspondence and following up. I think all of these things are super crucial because what I've learned, what we've learned this year in the current administration too, is that the job changes every day. You start with initiatives, and after that day, you realize that every day you're working in the office, there are two parts of the job. One is working on initiatives, but two is working on everyday life. You know, you could be working on initiatives that you claim that you're running on, and then you get a text message, you get an email, and someone comes into the office, and because we're interacting with each other. And so finding that focus between what was initial and also how things are updating. And with that, updating roles and constantly defining what we're doing and how we're doing it. So yeah.
Thank you. You now have 2 minutes to provide your closing remarks, and you may begin as soon as you're ready.
Thank you. So I think today we find ourselves in a position where we're broken based on the last year of this life, and it started out tangibly. It was, you know, I can't go out, I can't be social, I want to do this, I need toilet paper, whatever it may be. And then, you know, in the middle, it started transitioning to, you know, I'm now realizing how, you know, we often take things for granted, and we don't know how great it was until we lost it. And that's kind of where I think we transitioned. And now I think we're in an existential crisis where we don't even know what's bothering us anymore. You know, it might not even be the fact that, you know, our college students are going month to month, week to week on paychecks. It might not even be the fact that there are 17 million more people who face food insecurity from the start of the pandemic. Tuition debt is skyrocketing. And so there are a bunch of things that were problems before the pandemic, but have been expedited. So as a student leader, I pledge to highlight these inequities that we faced and the inequities that have been propelled onto us, especially for marginalized and minoritized populations. Student Government Association in a democracy is voted in by the majority, and the majority is supposed to use the majority and the resources that it contains to take care and to magnify the minority. And in doing that, having a truly cohesive operation. I know you're hurting right now. Everyone, the whole world is. And I know that, you know, the future is as bleak and as uncertain as we have ever faced. But I truly believe that there is great advantage to have in our suffering. And with that being said, I cannot wait to see the energy that we're going to have once we get over this and get past this. But I emphasize that we're not done. People are still dying, and new strains are coming in, and life as we know it is changing every day. So I asked and I pledged that we will be resilient as we go on, but at the same time, look for opportunity and advancement. Thank you.
Thank you. You may now return to your seats. Well, this concludes the event for this evening. Student Government Association would again like to express our gratitude to everyone in attendance, specifically the Hub at TTU, the Daily Torador, and the College of Media and Communications for supporting us tonight. The streaming of this video will continue to be available on YouTube, Facebook, and SGA will soon upload it to their video of their Instagram page. We would also like to remind everyone that voting opens March 16th and 17th and may cast their votes at ttu.edu/vote. Again, thank you all, and welcome.